Hello, everyone, everywhere. Pastor Bob Thibodeau here. Welcome to the Kingdom Crossroads podcast. Today, we're so blessed that you're joining us. Throughout history, there are stories that just shake us to our core. Stories of unimaginable loss, resilience, courage, the indomitable will to survive. Today, we're bringing you one such story, one that remains largely untold, but it's really as poignant and relevant as ever. It's a journey through the horrors of the Holocaust, the iron grip of communism, the enduring spirit of one man and his family. This is a story of survival against all odds, a testament to the strength, really, of the human spirit, and a tribute to those who never had a chance to share their voices. It is an honor for me to welcome to the program Dr. Robert Wolf. He's the author of Not a Real Enemy, the true story of a Jewish man's fight for freedom. It's a deep, personal, compelling narrative that takes us from the streets of Hungary to the death camps of Auschwitz and beyond. Dr. Wolf is a man with a profound personal connection to one of the darkest chapters in human history. His book, Not a Real Enemy, tells the harrowing yet inspiring story of his own father, Ervin Wolf, who survived the Holocaust not once, but twice, only to face the oppressive grip of communism in post war Hungary. Through meticulous research and heartfelt storytelling, Dr. Robert brings to life the struggles, the victories, heartbreaks of his family's journey from persecution really to freedom. His book not only honors the memory of his grandparents, Joseph and Camilla Wolf, who perished at Auschwitz, but also serves as a powerful reminder of the resilience and the hope that carried survivors forward. And today, we're going to dive into his incredible story and uncover the lessons that it holds for all of us. Amen. With all that being said, help me welcome to the program Dr. Robert Wolf. Dr. Wolf, it's a blessing to have you with us today, brother.
Pleasure being here, and I appreciate the invite. Thank you so much, Reverend.
Oh,
Pastor
just
Bob, right?
Pastor Bob. Just Pastor
Pastor
Bob.
Bob.
Yep.
Okay, Pastor
Amen.
Bob.
Amen.
What
And
what denomination? I meant to ask you.
non-denominational,
Oh, all right, fair
So,
enough.
yep. Yep. Amen.
We know
And,
my religion.
amen. And the first thing I got to say for everyone listening to us is go blue. I mean, the University of Michigan.
Yeah, tough season, but at least two Big Ten
Yeah.
winners in a row, and even
Yep.
tougher for the Lions. And at least Michigan won last year, so that's
Yeah. Amen.
they just ended
Amen.
the
Well,
season. They were
the
champs
first
up until
question.
Monday.
Yeah, that's right. Well, the first question I always start with is this. Other than that brief information I just shared, can you tell us in your own words who is Dr. Robert Wolf?
Well, thank you for those great words. We're really well said, and I appreciate it. Couldn't do better myself. But I'm like you. I'm from the state of Michigan. I was born in Detroit. I'm first generation. My parents came over to, New England initially, New York City to Providence to Boston to Detroit. So that was kind of their path over about a 5 or 6 year period. So they came in '56 at the end of the after the Hungarian Revolution. My mom and dad escaped the country right after. They were closing down the borders rapidly. That was my dad's fourth escape, so we can talk more about all that too. And he ended up doing his OBGYN residency in Boston and moved to Detroit because of the job market. So I was born in Detroit, raised in a small town called Mount Clemens. Went through high school there, played sports, loved music, still do, still love all of that. More of a historian now than back then, but end up going to medical school. Fortunately, at Michigan, like you said, Tufts for undergrad, and then residency. I did an internship with Boston University, radiology residency at Brown, and then my neuroradiology fellowship at Yale. So now
Amen.
I'm 30, so my indentured servantry. Now I feel like, what is it, Jacob? Who has the endless indentured servantry? So finally started making a living, and I've been in radiology for 35 years. And
Praise the
I
Lord.
just retired this last year, but just from radiology. I'm still working heavily with the fight against anti-Semitism, sharing my dad's stories and learning about other people's stories. And the truth of the
Yeah.
matter is, if you knew me 6 years ago, you'd say this guy would never be doing this. He'd never be writing my dad's story. But it was right there for me. We can talk about the history of
Yeah.
the book if you want later, but
Yeah.
here we are. But I do like a lot of things. I like history, like I said, sports, music. I'm a foodie. I'm into fitness, golf, um, travel, investing. And of course marketing my book. So that's
Amen.
what we're doing.
Amen. Amen. Well, your book, Not a Real Enemy, is it's both a tribute and a deeply personal journey. I mean, what was the emotional process like for you as you uncovered and then told your family story?
It's such a great question, and I probably answer it differently every time. But my dad and mom wrote the autobiography in the 70s. They wrote the stories as though they'd happened the previous day. They were very
Oh, wow.
clear. They were very educated and well-rounded, very sharp. And they did it paper. It was paper and pencil to typewriter to a computer to a disc. Flash forward to 1997. My dad passed away, unfortunately. 2016, my mom passed away, unfortunately. A historian friend of mine and my family's gave me the disc of my dad's story and said, "You got to look at this." And I'd already read the manuscript once, probably about 30 years earlier, but didn't think much of it. I did remember my dad's first escape, but once I started reading that, I also went back to work as a radiologist because I retired for a year, and that brought me to the book, the disc. It sort of summoned me like Superman's kryptonite. I like to say it's sort of a corny comparison, but it summoned me. And as a radiologist, I've got two screens. The left screen's got the patient queue. The right screen's got the images. So between cases, the left screen was my dad's autobiography, and the right screen was my dictating it into a nearly exact biography, just literally turning it in from first person to third person, cleaning up the English. And then it was not real successful. So that's emotional in itself. We can stop there and say there's imposter syndrome. There's the fear of success. There's the fear of failure. I've learned about all of that. So basically a failure. I mean, we tried to, then we are going to self-publish, but I had a beta reader, a couple of beta readers, and one knew my co-author, Janice Harper, and Janice Harper took a year and 20 edits later and a lot of history, like my history and hers, and we hired historians to verify what was going on in my dad's biography, and here we are. So the book's been out for
Amen.
I don't know, a little under 2 years, I guess, but we're still going strong, trying to send the message. And emotionally, sometimes I had to walk away. Sometimes I could only do a page a day, 2 pages. When I read again about my grandparents, the grandparents I never met, perishing at Auschwitz, then I had to walk away for a week. We all get writer's block, so that can be emotional because you get mad at yourself because you want to finish the project. I wanted to get it done before I moved down to Florida, so that was tough. But I've shed more than one tear with the good news. I cry more about the good news than the bad news. Like if I had the two United States Holocaust Memorial Museum book signings, so it was 4 days
Yeah.
total. So I got invited back a second time, which is really over the top. I mean, it's the pinnacle of what we do. That to me
Yeah.
is an emotional thing. So
Amen.
that's for my mom and my dad more than anybody. But obviously it goes a long way. I could do that every day, teaching the kids and their parents, talking about genocide and the Holocaust and just bad history, the dark, like you said, the dark world in general,
Yeah.
and how we're trying not to let it repeat itself, not currently, and it's difficult because, and my parents, first of all, they knew that I would do this, like they wrote the story as though they knew I would reproduce it, not only
Amen.
because it's a legacy to my family and to them, but also to realize what his struggles were, not to take things for granted in this country. And thirdly, somehow they knew that we'd be this country and the world would be going through this again. And it was not even 100 years, 80 years since the story was told, and
Yep.
we're already
Yep.
fighting this off, comparing this to the
Yep.
30s and 40s, and it's
Yep.
difficult. So there's a lot of
Amen.
emotions mixed in it. Some of it's, like you said, personal. It's about the family. Some of it's the sadness, what happened in Israel, even the war in Ukraine. Anti-Semitism came up early on in that war. That's a poor excuse especially when it's
Right.
from the Russian side, because I never thought that they cared about any religion, let alone Judaism. The Jews got a really hard time in Hungary and elsewhere, of course, by the
Yeah.
Soviets, not just the Nazis.
Amen. Well, your father, Irvin, he displayed remarkable resilience, basically. I mean, escaping, you said the Nazis twice, and then later the communists. What do you believe was the driving force behind his will to survive and fight for freedom?
Well, it's you live and you live or you die. I mean, they were in two wars, but he never was in a gunfight or a knife fight or used fisticuffs. He was just a forced laborer in the middle of nowhere in the Carpathian Mountains in Hungary, and not knowing where they were going, not knowing where they were, deplorable conditions, starving, getting beaten, threatened to have to lose their lives, threatened to have them killed. Uh, Russian planes flying over them and randomly shooting bullets at these guys, and they're unarmed, and these are just kids at 22, 23. Could I have survived that? I don't know. I don't know. Many Americans, I got to say, would have a hard time with that. My toughness is not from the military. My toughness is from going through med school and everything that I've done intellectually and the time spent. But my dad was really tough. He was well, I don't want to say a bad bleep. I don't want to say the bad word, but he was a bad guy. He was a cool guy, and I had no idea what he had to go through, and very difficult. And I'm amazed how he didn't have PTSD. Like if anybody had a reason to, he never smoked, he never went to the bottle, he never did drugs. He focused on being free and being a good doctor. And in the end, that's the incentive, that's the inspiration. So,
Amen. Amen.
it's self-explanatory because the anti-Semitism in the backdrop of the book through the whole thing, even the guy that cuts his hair, the doctor that treats his foot infection, the renegade who's helping them escape their final escape out of Hungary, all with anti-Semitic remarks. The border guards in Austria, even though they're helping them, believe me, my mom and dad wanted to argue with these people, but you couldn't come at a worse time. You don't if you want to
Yeah.
be free and you want to escape, you don't bite the hand that feeds you. I guess would be the.
Yeah. Amen. And the Holocaust, I mean, that's been widely documented. Yet the story of the Jewish community, and I'm going to try and pronounce this name, Győr, is that right? Győr,
Oh,
Hungary?
Jur. My dad's
Győr.
hometown
Okay,
is Jur.
Győr. Okay.
Győr.
Okay.
Jur.
Yeah, that remains, I've never heard of that. And so it must be relatively unknown. Why do you think this chapter of history received so little attention?
That's a great question. First time anybody has really asked me that. I think part of it because the genocide was so heavy in Hungary, and it kind of came late during the war, and it came quickly. It was overwhelming. My dad was useful, so he was spared because these young men were useful in these forced labor camps where he escaped twice. His second one was out of the city of Budapest, but he couldn't go back to Jur to see his parents and didn't know what their whereabouts was for months after the war. So, and that was a miracle how he found out, eyewitness person that found my dad in his hometown when he finally got to go
Mm,
back. And that, it was a frightening. It had to be harrowing going back to your own old house and seeing somebody else live there and
yeah.
having to call the police and have them escort them in and see if there was anything left that was theirs. And they've been pillaged and ransacked, and there really wasn't. But it was sad and amazing that the Russians would even, or the Hungarians would even let him take a look inside this apartment after everything that
Yeah.
went. And
Amen.
there's a lot to it. I mean, it's emotional. It's difficult. Uh, I just, like I said, the way he lived and had to put up with all that and then become a doctor, redo his residency, learn English, deliver 10,000 babies in the Detroit area, which is the punchline. That's redemption. I mean, it doesn't bring back his parents, and it doesn't bring
Yeah.
back my mom's grandfather, who was a rabbi, and he also perished at Auschwitz. Real threats to society. My dad's father, who perished, was a dentist, and my dad's mother was a super kind person. They were nice to the less fortunate. They gave free dental treatments. They shared food with people. There was no reason for this. I mean, when you're just
Yeah.
killing and you're doing it randomly and you don't know the
Yeah.
people, a lot of
Amen.
good people died. But to answer your question, no, I ramble, but there's such a high percentage of genocide. I mean, there were like 800. I don't remember the exact numbers, but 800,000 comes to the mind. At
Wow.
least pre-World War II, 800,000 Hungarians, 500 or 550,000 were killed. That might not count who was missing, who was murdered out in these forced labor camps, who got ill. Very difficult to know. But and as you know, the media then there were no police, there were no
Right.
lawyers, there was no TikTok or Facebook or videos to help these people. The victim or the witness was the next victim. When you think about the
Yeah.
Danube, for example, on the River Danube, the mass murder, or other forced labor camps where there were genocides and death marches that my dad and his friend Frank heard about, but loosely. They didn't have newspapers, they didn't have any information, so it
Yeah.
was very difficult. So
Amen.
yeah, so I guess that's all part of it.
Yeah.
It took us a while, obviously, to get into Europe and get entrenched and win the war because
Mhm.
Germany was so prepared so early, and we're seeing that
Yeah.
with Russia now, but Russia's starting to fail a little bit too. I'm thinking, I mean, maybe they have a year ago,
Yeah.
but just being in
Yeah.
a war anyways, failure. There's got to be. You and I
Oh,
are the
yeah.
type of people say, let's take it to the
Yeah.
table, or let's talk about it in the
Amen.
hot tub. This not
Yeah.
this
Amen.
not
Well,
lob missiles and shells at each other.
well, I know survival stories come with, often come with just moments of impossible choices that have to be made. Can you share some of the key decisions your father had to make and how they shaped the course of his life, as
Wow,
you
so
outlined
that's
in your
another great
book?
question, and it kind of ties in. I don't think I completely answered the last one, but um, yeah. Well, first of all, survival. My dad's risk tolerance by the time he left Hungary, his risk tolerance was so high that doing the things he was doing. It was just like jumping off a chair. It was nothing for him. His second escape, split second decision to run out of the headquarters that they called it the dog pound. They got screwed over by some truck driver, and he brought him back to the dog pound, which was another site where they were holding forced laborers that were caught, and they felt it was either almost certain death or a place that could have been worse where they were. So cigarettes actually helped them survive. A pack of cigarettes, believe it or not, was a distraction, and the way they got out, split second decision, split second timing, and luck between the guards. Um, here's I don't know. He argued with an arm Russian soldier during his third escape and got away with it. He actually won the argument with bluffing and with guys, and again, anything to do to survive. Um, Fourth escape was a little more convoluted, but they wanted to get out of the country, and they did what they had to do. It was either freedom or death. He wanted to practice medicine, but he wanted to do it in a free country. They were tired of the
Amen.
Soviets. They're tired of the spies and the clandestine meetings and the cloak and dagger stories. And enough was enough, and they wanted to live.
Amen.
And by the way, my mom's mother, who got remarried, and they got help from. They were in Israel at the time, and they got help from my mom's stepfather, Bertzi, Albert Lieberman was his name, and he worked for the out of Israel, out of the embassy to Hungary. So he was a consulate, so he could slip them a few shekels from time to time. And my dad had to sneak in and out of these buildings just to do that. And more cloak and dagger stories he couldn't get. And it was a Jewish guy walking out of this building with a couple $100 or Hungarian forints, whatever the case may be. Before their final escape from the country, my dad snuck into the medical center between security guards to find his dossier and see what the communists had to say about him. And just that alone, I'm like, this guy he's crazy. I mean, how and he just did it, didn't think twice about it, didn't get caught. And Not a Real Enemy was that chapter, and that the name of the book was Not a Real Enemy, because the Soviets in their arrogance thought my dad was not a real enemy, but in fact he really
Amen. That's good.
was, because
Amen.
they loved
Amen.
Mother Hungary, my dad, mom, but they hated the Nazi regime. They wouldn't take part of the Nazi. They wouldn't buy into that or into communism. So in the end, they lost two good people. So they were a real enemy. Mom was a med student at the time, and she had 13 months to go, and unfortunately never went back, but still contributed to research in Boston, and ran the blood bank actually in the Hungarian Revolution. So
Amen.
that was a 2 week war that 3,000 people died in that war. And dad had to double down OBGYN duties, plus he was a trauma surgeon, and all of a sudden. So
Yeah.
3,000 people died in that war, and countless refugees and homeless and escapees. It was
Amen.
crazy.
Yeah,
And that was
because
just
you
2 weeks. So
weave,
I can't imagine Ukraine. And so
yeah,
anyway,
you weave together this historical context and add your personal narrative almost seamlessly in the book. What were some of the challenges you faced in balancing historical accuracy with creating a good storytelling book?
well, I got to give my co-author Janice Harper a lot of credit for the storytelling. So I just turned my dad's autobiography to a biography. So it's point A to B to C. Janice turned it into a real special novel. Conversations to and from the conversations alone, letters to and from home, parallel stories, converging stories, diverging stories, rather than just A to B to C. So there was that. The history part, she did her homework. I did my homework. We hired a retired historian from the United States Holocaust Museum, the Memorial Museum, to make sure that the history was accurate. He had 3 pages or 4 pages of corrections, and we went through all of those. And then, of course, editors, and some editors know their history. So it was plucked little by little. I learned as I went, and it's just great to share my little part of the history of
Amen.
Hungary that not a lot of people know about. So
Yeah.
uh,
Amen.
it, it was a
Amen.
great team effort. I got to say that. If you're a writer or an author, use the team. If you can afford it, hire a good beta reader, hire a good co-author if you need to. You need a copy editor. You want an editor for content, and ultimately, if you get published through a publishing house, they'll edit the book too. So, and we literally got our publisher, Amsterdam Publisher, who's got a lot. That's what all they do is Holocaust related books. Although we all have our
Amen.
little variances. Mine's, the communist Hungary, and this one's about music, and this one's about food. This one's about Auschwitz. But fantastic publishing company. And bottom of the ninth, shoestring catch. That was the last query. And thanks to my co-author, and she took us on. And so here we go strong, and a lot of
Amen.
support. And the authors all have good support for each other. It's not, it's a tough business. It's a fickle business
Yeah.
trying to sell books. And there's a lot of
Yeah.
good ones out there, Holocaust and otherwise. So, but my little charge here on this planet, while I still have a few good days left, is to share the message about fighting hate.
Amen. Well, how has how has your family's history influenced your own perspective on life and your identity?
And a great question. 180 degrees because, I'm one of these guys. Well, I don't take things for granted. I'm not one of those guys who takes things for granted. But when I read about what happened to my mom and dad and their families, I realized that it affected me profoundly. I mean, that was motivation enough to go ahead and work on this book. It's just that itself. But it's inspiring, like you say, the hope, determination, the integrity, the courage, the brains, and never fighting with anybody, just arguments at the worst. But it was very motivating. Is the best word I can come up with. It was
Amen.
just self motivating.
Amen. Amen. Well, Dr. Wolf, this has been so interesting. How can someone obtain a copy of your book? I take it it's on Amazon.
It is. May I show the book cover?
Yep.
The
Yep.
book cover was a guy from Croatia. We never met him. It was so it's not a real enemy. The true story of a Hungarian Jewish man's fight for freedom. I think they did a wonderful job with the book cover. Yes, it's on Amazon. That's the simplest. If you can find me on social media across the board. I'm on Meta. I'm on X. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram. Newly on TikTok. A couple people said try it. It's not what I thought a good way to sell books, but if I sell 10 books off of TikTok, then I'm doing my thing. And I
Yeah.
joined Blue
Amen.
Sky too. So I'm on a lot of social media. My email address, or sorry, my website is robertjwolfmd.com. And if you message me there, or well, not so much the website, but if you message me on social media and you want my email address to share, I've done a lot of podcasts. Thank you very much again for inviting me. TV interviews. I'm still doing a lot of
Amen.
book talks, and I'm reaching out on social media. But you can find the book "Not a Real Enemy" on Amazon, Google "Not a Real Enemy" or Robert J. Wolf, MD. It's on Barnes and Noble, Walmart. It's at Tufts University, my undergrad alma mater, and it's at four
Amen.
Holocaust museums. God bless. It's in the U.S.
Praise the Lord.
Holocaust Museum in D.C., the Zeckelman Center in Michigan, the Memorial and Tolerance Center in Long Island, where I'm doing a talk in March.
Amen.
Blessed for that, and also the one in Illinois, the Holocaust Museum in Illinois. 10% of
Amen.
my author proceeds are being donated to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. That's in perpetuity. I hope the kids and
Amen.
grandkids support that and make that happen. And after I'm gone, and Jeff Bezos recently said, the Amazon CEO, he says, always wanted to build a company or something on this planet that would long outlive me after I'm gone. I guess that's how I
Mm.
feel too about the
Amen.
legacy of the book. So, Not a Real
Amen.
Enemy.
That's
Please
awesome.
read it and reach out. Feedback welcome. Like I said,
Yep.
podcasts, Zooms. I'll travel anywhere. I haven't said no to anything. That I'd go to Alaska. I forgot to ask you where you are because I know you said you're
I'm in
from Michigan,
Baltimore, Maryland, just
Baltimore,
north of
Maryland. So
DC. Yep.
I wish
Yep.
I had known you before this podcast because I would have invited you,
Yep.
of course, to come visit if you wanted
Yeah.
it for my book signing
Amen.
at the
Absolutely.
Holocaust Museum. But hopefully
There'll
I'll
be
get
another
some.
one.
But
Yeah, there'll be
hopefully
another
that
one.
or
Amen.
a real live book presentation at one of the
Yep.
synagogues or churches, and
Amen.
I'm open to
I'll put
anything.
yeah, I'll put links to all this down in the show notes below. Folks, Dr. Wolf's book, Not a Real Enemy, the true story of a Jewish man's fight for freedom, it's more than just a personal story. It is a powerful testament to the resilience of the human spirit, really in the face of unimaginable darkness. I mean, as we reflect on his family's journey, we have to remind ourselves of the importance of remembering history, standing against oppression and opposition, and cherishing the freedoms that we often take for granted. Drop down the show notes right now, click the links right there, reach out to Dr. Wolf, and be sure to click the link to order his book, Not a Real Enemy. This is one book you definitely need to put on your reading list. Amen. And be sure to pass it along to someone of, let's just say, a younger generation. Because as Ronald Reagan once said, if we don't learn from history, then we're destined to repeat it. And we can see evidence of that today. And we don't
Amen
need to
to
go
that.
through all that stuff again. Amen. Dr.
Amen.
Wolf, thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to come on the program today and sharing all about your family history and this great book, Not a Real Enemy. I do appreciate your time so much.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it, Pastor Bob.
Amen. Folks, that's all the time we have for today. For Dr. Wolf, myself, Pastor Bob, reminding you to be blessed in all that you do.